My name is Joshua Mawuli Ametepe, and um, as has been introduced, I am a biomedical engineer from Ghana, and I am currently doing my PhD in Cardiff University. Um, Jacqueline informed me that I would be speaking, or invited me to speak on MRI advances from the Global South. And initially, I was slightly confused, basically, but I would explain further. Um, Several times when we think of certain high income countries, we sometimes mention places like the West, whereby the West, people are normally referring to places like Europe and then the US, when I think my supervisor mentioned that the UK is just north of Ghana on the map, like very north of Ghana, but not very west. So it becomes a bit different. However, I tried to curate certain advances that I could find online, reading multiple papers, and hoping that in the very least, I'm able to provide some information that would be useful to somebody today. Okay. So, yeah, a little bit about myself. As I've mentioned, I am a PhD student in Cardiff University, but before I came to Cardiff University, I was working as a biomedical engineer in Ghana, and my job mostly involved going to hospitals to um, repair medical equipment, install medical equipment, and provide information to or just training to lots of the medical personnel on how to use the medical equipment. This several times involved me joining multiple surgeries. And prior to all of that, during all of that, I had actually never interacted with an MRI scanner because just most hospitals within Ghana couldn't afford MRI scanners. I had seen some while I was in the university. I'd seen one of them in the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, and I think I'd seen another one at the Kumfanoche Teaching Hospital, which was near the university where I schooled. But those were all for excursions. So you had to go for an excursion just to even see an MRI scanner. And prior to entering into the university, I had no idea that there was such a thing as MRI. And fast forward today, I am doing my PhD in Cardiff University. That is James, who is working with me on the same project, which is the Unity project, which is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we have mostly been working on trying to improve diffusion images on low field scanners, particularly the hyperfine scanner. And for my project, I'm supervised by Professor Derek Jones and Professor Mara Cechinyani and Leandro Beltratini. I mention all this to try and then establish that I am not coming at this whole thing from the perspective of an expert. I'm coming at all of this from the perspective of a student who was only thrust into this world just a few years ago and has been forced to learn everything very rapidly. So I am by no means an expert. I am an engineer who didn't know anything about MRI until 2023, I guess. So that's mostly it. A lot of my work involves attempting to improve SNR on the images, which, of course, this is from a low field scanner, trying to remove the noise in the images or trying to improve the resolution in the images or trying to find ways to reduce scan time. And much of the lessons I have learned from this, which I think is heavily emphasized by what Dr. Andrew Webb mentioned, Professor Andrew Webb mentioned, is that several things seem to work nicely on high field systems, then you translate it to low field systems and they don't seem to work quite well because things have to be tailored to those specific scanners. So I'm here to try and then just mention some of the advances that I have managed to find during my online research when I went online to try and then find several advances that were made by people in Africa or Asia In the university first, I was informed of this Nobel CT scans, and it was awarded to two people. One of them was a South African, and their work contributed heavily towards the CT scanners that we have today, which have been very vital and instrumental in lots of medical diagnosis all across the world, Africa included. And from my personal experience as an engineer from Ghana, CT scanners were very, very common. The issue then is there's similar things when it comes to MRI because we had lots of CT scanners everywhere. So if something like this was very notable, let us look at what we could get from MRIs. Firstly, I would like to talk about some of the collaboratory works and organizations that have been set up recently, which I have personally witnessed because I've had the privilege of attending some of the African chapter ISMRM conferences. And I have heard and seen some organizations like Camera, which has been working a lot in democratizing MRI, of course, the founding of the African chapter, ISMRM, which I have been privileged to have attended most of the conferences so far, except the most recent one, which I think was in Tunisia. And I've met a lot of very great researchers from all across the African continent, working very hard to try and then improve um, just the nature of MRI for both clinical use and then research use all across Africa. And one thing I've also seen is that there is a lot of collaboration with people outside of Africa as well. In um, in joining some of these organizations and collaborating with people from these, I've managed to see quite a lot. There's been establishment of data sets specific to Africans. There has been establishment of multiple workshops, training programs, which I sometimes see a lot when I am with the African chapter ISMRM um, WhatsApp groups, for example. You see that there's a lot of training programs that have been held, which exists to try and empower people and give people a lot of knowledge, very technical knowledge, to help us all together improve upon our expertise when it comes to the MRI field. And in general, when we improve upon those, we are able to improve upon research and clinical care on the African continent. So I personally see a lot of these collaborations as major contributions towards the advancement of MRI on the continent. In addition, this is the project I have personally been privileged to have been added to, which is the Unity project, ultra low field neuroimaging in the young, which is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It has produced a lot of research works so far, and so far the goal has been to attempt to characterize development of the brain in children in the first 1,000 days of life. But in the pursuit of of the goal of the Unity project, there has been the spread of multiple low field scanners all across different places in the world, and places within Africa have benefited from it. There has been multiple low field scanners spread across, and it has also pushed a lot of collaborations between Africa and various places around the world when it comes to neuroimaging research and work with low field scanners. And in my opinion, this has pushed a lot when it comes to democratizing MR. If it wasn't for this project, I wouldn't have even known of the concept of democratizing MRI. I didn't even know that such a thing um, existed or was a need until I even joined this specific project, right? So such a thing has been a collaborative research with multiple people, and this has produced a lot of work, a lot of documented research, and it has also promoted lots of collaborations that I have found. So these are specific ones that I have personally seen, and I decided to also go into others that I may not have also seen or that I may not have had lots of knowledge of, right? But yeah, we can see here that lots of sites all across different places, Malawi, South Africa, even Ghana, where I'm from, have had access to low field MRI scanners, which has been, in my opinion, very beneficial and has at least opened a pathway to people even considering possibilities of improving MRI access through another means, which is low field scanners. There has also been work, lots of work. Obviously, the Unity project is working with the hyperfine soup scanner, which is very expensive. And there has been works to develop scanners that are much cheaper and have been homegrown. And this is, in my opinion, something that I found very inspiring. In the very first African chapter ISMRM conference, I was privileged to even hear about the building of these scanners and how there are sites in Uganda that are training people to construct these scanners um, on the African continent from home, from scratch, which is one of the things I wish I could learn while I was doing my engineering program, learning how to do some of these things from scratch. And I'd like to also recognize contributions from people like Professor Jones Obungoloch and Professor Andrew Webb, whose works have made some of these things very possible. Yeah, these are things, again, prior to 2023, I didn't even assume was possible, or I didn't even imagine was possible. And these are things that are actively working and is providing a lot of knowledge and technical expertise to people on the African continent, which I consider to be very vital contributions. So if you can notice a pattern here, a lot of the vital contributions are things that are currently happening right now. And I believe it's great that we, in the very least, get to witness some amount of history in the making. As part of the project and things I got to experience during my PhD, I got to attend the ISMRM conference in Singapore. And during the conference, there was the plenary and an award, a gold medal award was awarded to this man. He won during the um, conference, and this was for his work in quantitative susceptibility mapping. And I actually didn't even know about all of these. Like I said prior to that, I had seen presentations of these during some of the meetings that I had in Kubrick, some of the meetings that I was privileged to join. And this is work coming from people from Asia. And this is very vital, and it has contributed to a lot of diagnostic and research potential in MRI, basically using magnets, just trying to measure um, how various sections of the brain are magnetized during an MRI scan to attempt to make a map. And these maps are very vital in a lot of diagnostic and research tools. It is very good for measuring neurodegeneracy, for example. And this I found to be a very vital contribution. I was listening to the speech by the professor while the award was given, and it was, in my opinion, very inspiring how a lot of knowledge, a lot of math, a lot of information put together from very brilliant minds could contribute to um, diagnostic improvements in very simple technologies and could have such an impact all across the world. This has been one very great contribution to MRI, at least from the research that I have done while I was preparing for some of these. There is also work in functional MRI, and I found some of these during my research. This is Seiji Ogawa, who did a lot of work in functional brain mapping and functional MRI to try and monitor how the brain itself changes when we are performing different activities, or how the brain is affected by us doing different things. And this has been very vital in several areas of research. And I was reading somewhere last year that people were attempting to use fMRI to try and predict exactly what somebody is thinking at different stages, or try and um, identify if someone is thinking of, let's say, a train or a car. And this is really interesting. It's basically just reading the mind. And these are works. I believe Seiji Ogawa is a Japanese. Yeah. Going back to the African continent, I came across this specific paper from Malawi, which was titled Brain Imaging in Normal Kids, a community-based MRI study in Malawian children. When I read the paper, there was this statement that I saw in the paper that I wanted to highlight. It stated that, to the knowledge of the authors, these are the first normative brain MRI data from Africa. So this would be the first compilation of such data from normal children. And it's also the first report of incidental findings, which is very surprising because 2013 looks like it is really far away, but it isn't that far away. And if this is indeed the first um, normative data, it is rather quite telling. And if this is the first of its kind, then it is very important and obviously contributing to MRI knowledge and MRI research across the world and in Africa as well. This is information that is specifically tailored to people from Africa, and it is specific within the continent and within the population. And I believe it is also important because we find lots of research coming from high income countries, and we are supposed to apply the information from those research to people in low income countries. And there is a very likely possibility that differences in the brains of the target populations might cause certain changes in some of the variables that we might be measuring, which obviously I cannot look at images and then see there's something wrong. That is very specific to the target population is important. Therefore, having lots of data sets that are specific to people coming from global south, like Africa, where I'm from, is rather vital. So I found some of these research which people are doing, curating data directly in Africa. I also found this specific one, improved segmentation of cerebellar structures in children. I think this led to the development of the Cape Town Pediatric Cerebellar Atlas. Sorry, it's a mouthful, tongue twister. But this was developed in Cape Town. That's the paper that I have posted, which we can see. So it developed a probabilistic atlas using brains of several children from South Africa. And we can see some pictures from the paper, which was showing various brain various segmentations and probability estimates from those. And I believe it is very notable because this is an atlas that is built specifically on data from people within South Africa. So if somebody wanted an atlas that was specific to a South African population, this is where to go, which, like I said, it's very important to get such population specific data. So this is one that was done in Africa. So they developed it from children aged 9 to 13. And it was created to improve the accuracy of cerebellar segmentation in pediatric neuroimaging. So if you wanted to do segmentation in the cerebellum, we had an atlas specific to an African population that we can use. So in terms of designing this atlas, they scanned, from what I saw in the paper, 18 developing South African children, and there was manual tracing of several parts of the cerebellum, and they created a probabilistic atlas. And this provides an atlas that is not just specific to the population, but is also age appropriate, which means if we wanted an atlas for African children, we had it, and it supports a lot of pediatric research in Africa and globally as well. And I've seen the importance of segmentation during, of course, some of the research that I have done. So this, I believe, has been a very notable contribution. There has also been, I found quite a huge number of papers when I was attempting to prepare for this presentation. I found quite a lot of papers which were trying to talk about how the brain changes with HIV. So if people are infected with HIV, how that affects the brain and how we can monitor brain development among people with HIV, particularly children who also contracted the disease because their parent or their mother had the disease. And these are some of the notable papers that I found. And a lot of them were specifically from South Africa. And if you can check based on the dates, I think some of the dates are in here. Most of these are very recent. For example, this one was published in 2022. And several of the ones that I read made use of diffusion tensor imaging. And they were able to monitor changes in fractional anisotropy and mean diffusivity between populations that had HIV and populations that didn't. And they also checked how um, antiretroviral therapy affected those things, especially if people were children and they were gradually growing up. And these have been very important sources of data for the African continent. At least in Ghana, that I know, that I'm from, at least, HIV is a massive problem. And this seems to be research showing how it is affecting our brains, which is very important. And like I said, a lot of the research that I've seen specifically on HIV and its effects on people's brains have been from South Africa. I personally also only started touching or even learning about diffusion tensor imaging in just 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it's almost 3 years now. So yeah, and essentially, uh, I had no idea that understanding these things could help in research about how a disease affects people's brains, and these are very important. So these were some of the contributions that I managed to find as well. And yeah, there were quite a lot, but I wanted to give some overall takeaways from all of the things that I have seen. A lot of the innovations that I saw were collaboratory. This wasn't just one specific individual or even one specific site working on a particular project to cause a massive breakthrough. It was multiple people coming together, putting their heads together to seek answers to questions and try to find solutions to problems. And all of these collaborations managed to lead to massive breakthroughs. And these collaborations were done by people not just limited to, say, Africa or Asia or in any specific part of the world, but a lot of the developments and breakthroughs that I have seen, at least from my attempt to research for this, has been from people all across the world collaborating. And none of the breakthroughs were done by individuals in a vacuum. It was just multiple people building upon earlier works of multiple people. So lots of people coming together, putting their heads together, and building upon works that have been done already by multiple people. Several things were just people putting together mathematical frameworks or working with tools that other people have built, which I believe is very important. There has to be a lot of internal and external collaborations if we are supposed to advance neuroimaging research or even MRI research all across the world. When I first came to the UK for studies, I observed a massive knowledge gap. It was like I was thrown into a world where I knew absolutely nothing. And part of the knowledge gap exists obviously because I had there weren't much MRI around for us to even get the chance to learn about them. I recall my medical imaging classes, which was one of the courses I took as part of um, my biomedical engineering program. In medical imaging class, we learned about MRI just once. and a lot of our extra classes were focused on studying X-ray machines, CT scanners, and ultrasound scanners. But a huge amount of the focus was on X-ray machines and CT scanners. And obviously, we can't blame the lecturers or the people who designed the course, because if we graduate and we are supposed to be working in the country, those are the tools we are going to be working with. In the company where I worked, the company also sold equipment. And whenever people pitched to hospitals to buy MRI scanners, the very simple thing was that they were too expensive for anyone to purchase. So people would rather purchase ultrasound scanners or CT scanners and forego the diagnostic potential of MRI scanners. And from what I have found out so far, Ghana is actually even doing well when we compare it to several African countries which do not have a lot of scanners. And the absence of these also creates a massive knowledge gap in these specific fields. And it's not like it's a knowledge gap that cannot be bridged, because a lot of the things I learned were information that could be found online. A lot of the mathematical tools and tools in physics that I learned, you could go online, find information on website that had articles. I could learn a lot of skills from just using YouTube and various tools, and a lot of the knowledge were very vital in solving different problems. So it's information that is available, but because of the lack of resources, I realized several people don't even pursue this information, and that causes a massive knowledge gap. And it's not one that I believe can be fixed easily, but with joint collaborative efforts by different people working together, I believe that you know when people from all across the world and within Africa, Asia, different parts of the globe work together, we are able to bridge not just the resource gap, but also the knowledge gap, and manage to find very relevant solutions to various problems that can help us cause an impact within the world. I apologize if this hasn't been too long, but again, this is just me tackling this from the perspective of a student who has managed to learn a little in a little amount of time within this beautiful world. So thank you all very, very much.